Wishmaster 2 Evil Never Dies was released in 1999, and this one was directed by Jack Sholder. Jack Sholder I am familiar with from Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2 Freddy's Dead, mostly. And I really like that sequel. A lot of people are on the hate side of it, but I really like the second Nightmare on Elm Street film for sure. And Jack Sholder is also known for Alone in the Dark from 1982. That was his directorial debut. I actually have a review for Alone in the Dark on the channel when I watched it for the first time, if you want to check that one out. But yeah, those two films from him definitely made his name familiar for me. And Wishmaster 2 is a first time watch, just like the original Wishmaster was for me, and just like the next two are going to be. So far, these are fun. The first film definitely had its blend of horror and humor at the same time. This one definitely is best watched as a comedy, straight up. The best way you're going to enjoy this film is just not taking it seriously and not really watching it as a straight up horror, but enjoying the comedic elements to it and just the absolute corniness and cheesiness throughout. And if you can do that, then it is a hell of a lot of fun. It's obviously nowhere near as good as the original film. The Jinn, however, still looks very good. They do change him around a little bit with the makeup effects and the way his face looks. He has this kind of Jeepers Creepers look to him, like the Creeper from Jeepers Creepers. And he really looks like the stereotypical devil that they portray and represent in a lot of horror films. Just the way his teeth look and his mouth looks, and he has the horns coming out, which look a little floppy. Like they definitely don't look solid, but they hang over his shoulders and they sort of look like they did in the last film with the tentacles coming out of his neck. But his face is definitely more like demonic looking in a stereotypical kind of way, which I really like. I think he looked really cool in this film. And it's probably also because they show him a lot more than they did in the first film in monster form. So obviously Andrew Devoff is back. Yep, Andrew Devoff still playing Nathaniel Demarest as his human form, and he shows up like half and half from demon form, or Jinn form, I should say, and human form. But this film starts out with a robbery, and it's these. It's more than one. It's more than two people, but your main characters are this one guy named Eric and this girl named Morgana, and they're robbing an art gallery. And shit goes down. Cops show up, and Eric ends up being shot. And then Morgana ends up shooting the police officer that shot Eric, and ending like ends up killing him. And then Eric dies in her arms, and she obviously feels tremendous guilt. She escapes the scene, and then we have the opal, the red opal, fall on the ground and splatter or split again, I should say. And then this like jelly stuff comes out of it and hits the wall, and then you have this beautiful practical effect where the Jinn comes out is as this little like creature form. He has like the legs crawling, and it's just his head, and he almost looks like this kind of rodent, kind of insect looking thing. It's a really cool looking monster. A little reminiscent of Pumpkinhead in a sense, in a few scenes that some of the Pumpkinheads portrayed Pumpkinhead. Kind of like that, that idea kind of thing. And he's trying to get Eric to grant a wish, and the first thing that comes to Eric's head is that he wishes that he was never even born. So he's granted the wish, and he like reverses, his face goes like to childhood, and then he just disappears basically. And this gives the Jinn his strength back. And once he turns into human form, which he does pretty quickly, he turns into the Nathaniel Demarest way quicker than he did in the last film. He basically turns himself in and says that he was the one who robbing the place solo. He was the one who shot the cop and not Morgana. And he basically puts himself in jail essentially, and even to the point where the cops are like, clearly you didn't rob this place up by yourself, so who the hell are you covering for? But he insists that he did. So his basic goal is to go to prison and collect as many souls as he can. This film does one huge thing very differently than the last film. It gives more lore, and it gives more lore than the last film gave at all. For example, in this one, he needs to collect 1001 souls before he can even grant three wishes to the original person who woke him up. In this case, it would be Morgana, because she's the one who dropped the statue and had the opal open up and basically released him before she ran off. and he has to collect 1,001, which he didn't even come close to in the last film, unless he gathered 1,001 behind the scenes. But they didn't mention that he collected like six, and then was able to grant Alex, I think was her name, three wishes. But anyways, we're obviously not going to have continuity in a series like this. I wouldn't expect it to have much continuity. These two films have nothing to do with each other, other than the Jinn himself. They're two separate stories. But anyway, he's in prison and he's trying to collect as many souls as he can in prison. And a lot of the wishes are actually really funny in this one. At the beginning, there is one wish that is really stupid and makes no sense. One of the police officers comes into the gallery and tells Nathaniel, or the Jinn, whatever you want to call him, to freeze with a gun in the air. And he's like, "What, freeze?" And the cop's like, "Yeah, damn it, I said freeze." And then the genie's like, "As you wish," and like turns him into ice. He didn't wish for anything. This is worse than the last film when it comes to stupidity, where this Jinn is just granting people things that they didn't wish for. First of all, he told him to freeze, so if anybody's gonna ice themselves, it should be the Jinn. But of course, the Jinn's not gonna ice himself. But nothing in what that police officer said had anything to do with himself freezing. He didn't say freeze me. He said freeze, meaning the Jinn. Anyway, I think deep into everything. Should I think deep into Wishmaster? Probably not, but that scene made no sense. Other than that one, a lot of the wishes are funny, including my favorite, I must say, where one of the prison mates basically wishes his lawyer, who's supposed to get him off but is failing, to go fuck himself. And he wishes this, and then he meets up with the lawyer, and the lawyer starts saying like, "Oh, I found all these loopholes, and you can like literally walk free tomorrow. It's crazy. Like I was looking through your file, and I swear, with one more court case, you could be walking free by the end of the week." And he's like, "Oh, fantastic!" And then he starts like limping in pain, the lawyer, and he's limping, and he's like, "Ooh," and then like he doesn't know what the hell's going on with him, and then his legs basically bend backward, so his body bends in half, and then his legs turn around like a whole 180, and the bottom half of his body basically starts doing him in the ass. And he's like, "Oh." that's that was the best, I swear. I knew like some of these wishes, when as soon as the people say them, you know exactly what's going to happen. One of the prison guards, who's actually played by Debo from Friday. The actor's name is Tommy Lister Jr. Rest in peace, actually, because he only died like 2 years ago or less. But yeah, Debo from Friday, from the Friday films, is in this film as a prison guard. Obviously, a huge, busty guy who's like jacked. Playing the tough guy that he also played in Friday, but as a prison guard instead. There's a scene where he like grabs the Nathaniel, the Jinn, and he's like, "I wish I could just slow dance with you, Compton style," or something like that. And then the genie's like, "As you wish," and he brings him to this like Compton style hell. And then he's monster form, and he's just like, "Shall we dance?" And yeah, next scene next thing you know, or next scene, you see the prison guard's body, basically skinless, and the genie is like wearing his skin around the prison and like talking in his voice. It was pretty funny. So basically, the story mostly revolves around the main character, Morgana. This is the girl who shot the cop, and she's having visions of this genie and nightmares, pretty much. And she's also feeling tremendous guilt, obviously, for murdering an innocent man who had a family, and losing Eric, her best friend, and having these visions. So she's basically plagued by a bunch of trauma going on. She doesn't know where these visions are coming from either, because they seem to be happening very randomly. And they keep telling her about fulfilling a prophecy, and she sees the visions of this Jinn, this monster, but she doesn't know where it's coming from. She meets up with a priest who is also an old friend, Father Gregory, and it's not really explained what kind of history they have, but it's very obvious and clear that it was romantic and sexual in some sort of way. They don't really do flashbacks or anything like that with their relationship, but you definitely can sense a lot of history with these two. And he's now a priest, so I'm also assuming that he was probably involved in a life of crime before, along with Morgana. But he's at a church now. He's either a priest assistant or a main priest at a church, and she goes to him to seek guidance, kind of thing. And she's basically just searching for answers and looking for this Jinn that she keeps seeing visions of. She's able to track him down a lot, and I don't see how necessarily. I understand that she gets visions from him, but to pinpoint his location all the time, which she's able to track him down like a good 3 or 4 times throughout this entire film. It's not really explained that well, but you kind of just have to set that plot hole aside and just kind of go with it, which is not the biggest deal in the world. But yeah, it's definitely not it's not talked about or explained very well in that sense. The whole 1001 souls, that's the biggest plot hole in this one, because eventually he ends up getting 200 after the prison thing. He also meets this Russian guy in prison named Osip, and Osip is he has his own crime wing, crime I don't know, crime ring, I guess, where he's like kind of the little guy, but he wishes himself out of jail, and basically once he starts to get to know the Jinn, and he basically wishes himself out, and he gets out with the Jinn, and then he's like bragging to all his friends, saying that the genie can do anything for them, and he's basically hooking up the Jinn, or Nathaniel Demarest, of all these people and all these other souls that he can take, but it still only accumulates to like 200 or something like that. Another wish I forgot to mention is that during while Nathaniel's in prison, this guy he wishes for drugs basically, and he wishes that he could get wasted, and the genie's like, wasted? He's like, yeah, ripped from the ground to the top. I want to be stomped right into the ground. And he has two buddies with him, and then the genie's like, as you wish. And then the buddies, the friends of his, start kicking the shit out of him uncontrollably, so they start losing control of their legs and their arms, and they just start beating the shit out of the guy. And this is where like Debo comes to step into, and they have no control over themselves, so they're beating up the prison guard. I call him Debo because of Friday, so you know who I'm talking about. But I did find that part funny. When Osip is with his Russian boys and whatnot, there's this Russian guy named I forget his name, but he's one of the top, and he has this beef going on with this other this rival dude, right? And this guy, like, he doesn't even like mentioning his name, but Osip says like the genie can basically grant him any wish he wants and take care of this guy wherever he is. And he's like, you can do that? And he's like, yeah, anything you wish. And the Russian guy's like, I want his head, or something like that. Yeah, I want his head. And then the genie's like, as you wish. And then it goes back to this guy, and all you see is him with a different head. So you have this guy with like long hair, and he's like confused, and everybody's like aiming a gun at him, and he has no idea what's going on until he looks in a mirror, and he sees he has this rival's head on his head. I was confused for a bit, and I had to think about it. I'm like, oh, he wants his head. Okay, gotcha. Good on you, Genie. I like that one. Very, very clever. And then the film basically ends with, not ends, but in the third act, I mean, it takes the genie to a casino, because he got the idea of going to a casino from this Russian guy, Osip. And at the casino, you got a bunch of people gambling and making bets and wishing. So, perfect little hellhole for this Jinn. So he goes and he talks to the manager of the casino, and he starts like pretending that he's like in the industry and stuff like that, and he has the people like start winning a lot so they can wish more, and then he gathers another like 200 souls. Still doesn't come anywhere close to 1001. I don't know why they decided, or why Jack Sholder decided to put that random number 1001 in this film, but I guess he just wanted to expand the lore a little bit on that one. And then you have just a bunch of people like dropping like flies when he starts to collect the souls from everybody that he granted one wish. His lore basically is to grant people a wish, anybody, and then in trade for their soul. And then once he gets to the 1,001 mark, he can go to the original person who let him out and grant that person three. And after their three wishes, he basically is at full freedom to take over the earth. That's the Jinn lore in the mythology of it, kind of thing. And then after the people in the casino start dropping, the casino manager is basically like confused, and he's like, "I've had enough of this shit." And the main character Morgana is trying to like stop him from saying anything because clearly this Jinn will take anything he says and mess it up and just totally screw everything up. But the casino manager, he basically is like, "I wish I could just see this nightmare come to an end." And then, of course, as you wish, these gates come and block all the doors, and then just everything starts going haywire. Kind of similar to the ending and the climax of the first film, where everything just starts going nuts. But these people start dying. The poker chips start turning into bullets, and they just start ricocheting everywhere, going through people's necks. There's beautiful practical effects, gore everywhere. There's a scene where this old lady's stomach like belches up, and I'm like, is she gonna like pop out a infant or something? She looks like she's in her like 60s or something like that. But her belly just bursts, and then she just starts shitting coins, like with the shit sound effects and everything. She just starts shitting coins. I'm like, oh my god, you went there. Cards, like playing cards, start going off like frisbees and like slitting people's throats. There's a scene where the roulette wheel basically falls off the table and grows like these spikes. It almost looks like a tire hub, but with knives on it, or like some kind of like spikes with like the edges on them. Like I hope you know what I'm talking about. Just starts spinning, and it turns into like basically a chainsaw, and it starts spinning faster and faster and just flying through the room, chopping people up. It's just insanity. And then he somehow reaches his 1,001. I guess there was more than like 800 people in the casino at that time, and he's finally able to force, I guess you could say, Morgana to make her three wishes. Now, she does try to make a few wishes to destroy the genie, just like Alex did in the last film, but you obviously can't destroy what's immortal. She wishes for him to have never existed or something, and he's like, you can't change what is immortal or what is eternal or something like that. She wishes for all the evil to disappear in the world, and he's like, evil is one half of a perfect sphere. Wishes don't work like that, and all that stuff. So there's a bunch of loopholes that, he says you can wish for anything you want, but clearly you can't because he has unwritten rules or whatever you want to whatever you want to call it. And her wish isn't as good as Alex's in the cleverness, I must say. I think her final wish, she kind of does it in the same realm but different. She wishes that the cop that she shot could be alive again. So she kind of takes it as a non-personal wish, or a senseless wish, like a non-selfish wish. There's a word for it, but I'm blanking on it right now. I guess just selfless wish, I would say. But yeah, she wishes that, and then she reads this. She learns this chant because in the middle of the movie, her and Gregory are researching the mythology of the jinn, and there's this chant that the one who freed the genie can read, and it goes Nib Shugaroth Bahim, and she puts her palm on the opal, and she reads this quote, and then she basically saves herself and all the souls that the genie took. Now, why the jinn would be holding the opal with him and not like have it hidden somewhere, knowing that she knows this chant, and she can use the opal against him, and he's just holding it in his hand like palm open. It's really 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 convenient, to say the least. But that's basically how she ends it all. It's a little, like I said, not as clever as the other film in the final wish, in the final showdown kind of thing. But the casino scene was really really entertaining, and the practical effects were nice. And if you're a gore fan, if you like funny gore as well, it's definitely something to be enjoyed. This is nowhere near as good as Freddy's Dead, the second Nightmare on Elm Street, and it's obviously not as good as Alone in the Dark either. Alone in the Dark is a much more grounded movie. It's more like a home invasion thing going on, but yeah, this one, I don't know. Like it's hard to rate this one because it has so many elements going on to it theme wise. But I know that critics didn't like this one too much, and a lot of horror fans that I've listened to aren't a big fan of it either. But I also hear much worse from the next two, so we'll see how those go. But I mean, as a horror fan and as a B movie fan, and as somebody who just likes cinema in general, these things don't offend me all that much. You know, it's not a great film, but it's also not a waste of time in my opinion. Certainly not boring. You know, a little bit more cheap directed than the original Wishmaster, but we're comparing the original Wishmaster here. We're not comparing we're not comparing the second film to a genius piece of work with the first one. So you kind of have to know what you're stepping into when it comes to films like this. If you're a horror fan, I certainly recommend them. You could do way worse. And with a great, very valuable four set from Vestron Video with all four films in it on Blu-ray. I mean, you can't go wrong with that. So, I mean, it's a semi-recommend for me. If you're a horror fan, it's a definite recommend for me. And check them out. I'm sure they're streaming somewhere. I think the first two are streaming on Tubi, if I'm not mistaken, because I think I watched the first one, or parts of it anyway, a while ago on Tubi. But never really sat down and watched any of them in their entireties. Definitely none of the second, third, and fourth. So, but yeah, that's all I got on that one. It was cool, and I can't wait to review the third and the fourth for the first time. So until then, subscribe to Morgan Film Fan if you like to listen to my voice, or if you like my film reviews. I'll be back soon with some more, and stay tuned if you're interested. Until next review, have a good one, and cheers.